How are we doing, guys? Welcome back to Barca Buzz. It is myself, joined with my friend Robbie. We are discussing Barcelona's Asia Tour, and we start with Japan on Sunday. Vissel Kobe away from home for Barcelona, the first preseason match of the season. And Robbie, it's good to have Barca back. It's good to have Flickball back after just over 2 months without it. It does feel good to have it back, mate.
I'm very excited, bro, for the new season. Some new signings. I saw also Ter Stegen is injured and will not participate in the first 3 4 months, and that means basically the show goes on.
Yeah, that particular drama rumbles on, doesn't it? Sort of awkwardly in the background. But I'm hoping, Hansi Flick, an experienced coach, I'm hoping we've got a handle on that situation in terms of not letting Ter Stegen disrupt our season. Because let's be honest, obviously we know we had the hashtag Ter Stegen out. I think obviously ourselves were quite critical when we said about the personal side of it, when it got quite personal. But to be honest, you look at the situation. I think we all know, and Ter Stegen probably himself in his heart of hearts knows that his time at Barca's over. He must know that. And, if you look at his ambitions as a footballer, his fact he's 32, 33, might be the last chance of ever playing in the World Cup. You think he'd make he'd kind of be a little bit more proactive about the situation. And clearly, obviously, I think I've read numbers such as 14 million a year he's on. That's obviously a big factor for him. So for me, I think he rightly gets criticism for that. And his behaviour, I think, in that tweet, I think is totally deliberate, and he rightly should be criticised and punished for it. As far as I'm concerned, Robbie, I'm not sure if you'd agree or not on that.
No, I completely agree. I think it was a lack of respect, first of all, to basically say that you're out for 3 months, especially to because you couldn't deregister him. You need to be at least out for 4 months, and the doctors saying that the injury takes time and your recovery time takes from 4 to 5 months, and you come out and say that it's only 3 months in a chat GPT basically written message because it was an AI message, completely obvious. And I think, yeah, it's a lack of respect, first of all for you as a player and as a person, and lack of respect for your teammates that trust you and basically being your their captain, and now they can trust you with this type of stuff.
For me, he's been nothing but a child since Juan Garcia joined the club. I think around the whole situation, I think he tried to make it as difficult as possible in terms of in the media, a couple of comments and bits and pieces like that. And obviously, he has got his friends in the media as well. It's very clear to Stegen. We know he is very close with certain Catalan-based journalists. So it is interesting in that kind of respect how this one's going to play out. But let's move on to the positive stuff because it is 99% positive. It's Barcelona back in action. And let's talk about, obviously, in terms of this tour itself and the promising players we have in this squad, in terms of, obviously, players, the majority we've already seen play for the football club, but in terms of players emerging in this squad, I mean, who are you looking forward to seeing most, Robbie? Or, if you want to give us a bit of a list or a breakdown of players you're really looking forward to seeing over these next couple of games.
To be honest with you, I think I'm very excited for the guy that just signed with us because it caught me by surprise. First of all, that he's in the squad for the Asia Tour, and he's training at the moment with the first team and being integrated as a first team player. When all the news were saying that he's a second for Barcelona B type of transfer, and the fact that he made the squad and he's prioritized. And we all know Hansi Flick and Barcelona's culture is basically La Masia, and he's being prioritized over some. I think Tony Fernandez was not picked, and some of the other guys, the Fernandez cousins, were not picked in this Asia tour, and Rooney was picked. And I'm very excited to see what he got. I know before he got his ACL, he tore his ACL, I think last season maybe. He was the Scandinavian talent held to the most standards, like Erling Haaland stuff. He was very, 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 very promising in when he was in Copenhagen playing. I think he's even scored against Manchester United in Champions League. And there were some nice tapes of him pre ACL, and I have to see him post ACL too. I'm sure the new environment and the new context and the new basically culture and everything new for him will only give him the best accommodations, luxury perhaps, and a new face in the dressing room is always welcomed. especially, oh, and of course Marcus Rashford. We already talked about him and how much we like him as a player, and how excited we are for him to shine on the biggest stage, because Barcelona is the biggest stage. And I'm very excited to see where Hansi Flick will firstly use him in the preseason tour. I know Pau Victor was used as a shadow striker in the last preseason, and yeah, now Pau Victor is gone, and probably Rashford will be used alongside Lewandowski in this Asia tour if not, or I don't think he'll start with the starters, of course, in the Asia Tour, because it's an exhibition game. It's for sponsors mainly. I think Rakuten hold it this one from their pocket, basically paid for everything, the trip and everything. And of course, the preseason will start with the AC Milan games, I think, and the Real Madrid one especially. That's where the true colors of of new Barcelona will show. And but basically, to say it all, I think Marcus Rashford and Rooney are my prospects, from the new transfers, and of course Juan Garcia, that will be undoubtedly the starter because Ter Stegen is unavailable.
Yeah, I mean, just going on to Rooney there to start off with, I mean, it is very important to obviously emphasise the fact of the promise of the player pre ACL. You know, there's no question about that. And I think the signing itself is low risk from a financial point of view. It's low risk in terms of it's not cost us a lot of money. Wages wise, he'll probably be one of the lowest earners in the squad. And all the emphasis is on Rooney to get himself back to the level of pre ACL. But what the risk would be is with someone like, say, Tony Fernandez, for example, if he is, for example, seen as the next player to progress through to the first team, it maybe does block his progress a little bit. But I don't mind Barcelona kind of getting involved in the European market for younger players if the player is that good. For example, obviously we look at all those years ago in terms of Pedri. Obviously from Las Palmas, for example, I don't mind if the player stands out that much and the fee is low risk as well. I don't really mind the approach too much. And by all intents, the media have been very much kind of saying that Rooney is massively impressed in training. Whether that is the case or not, who knows? Because we've heard several different kind of stories about different players impressing in training over the years. And next thing, they're sold about a week later. This is Barcelona. So everything you hear about Barcelona, unless it's from Hansi Flick or someone who represents Barcelona's mouths, you can't really fully back it, in that kind of sense. So we'll have to see with Rooney. Obviously, we know of Ansu Fati, for example, coming off the back of a massive injury, how much that kind of impacted Ansu. So it'll be interesting to see from that point of view. What I would say about Rooney is I think he's less reliant on pace than Ansu Fati, for example, or being able to, you know, high intensity sprinting, having that in his game. I think Rooney is a bit more ball to feet. And potentially the biggest thing for me with Rooney, and to an extent with Rashford as well, is the fact that they're going to take minutes off Rafinha and Yamal. And that is a good thing because they can't both play the same amount of minutes as they played last season because it did get a bit crazy at times in terms of they were playing sort of, 5 games every 3 weeks kind of thing. It got into that kind of stage all season where they weren't really getting any rest, unless it was a game where there was nothing on the line, in the Champions League, maybe group stages, or if it was like against a really, really poor team in the league. And we did actually see that backfire once or twice. I think Osasuna, when we tried to rotate things around, we lost 4-2 in that game. Leganes in the first half, who were absolutely shockingly bad, probably our worst half of the whole season. And obviously Rafinha and Yamal come on at half time and we win that game 2-1. So it's nice in the fact that I think Rooney and Rashford are a massive, certainly Rashford is a massive step up from the rotations or the squad options we had last season. And for me, Rashford, as you say, Robbie, I think Rashford can be a lot more than rotation, whether it's on the left wing or it's up front or even on the right wing to an extent. If we're rotating out Lamine from time to time, you do have that versatility there. So obviously those two straight away are very exciting to see. Juan Garcia as well. As you say, Robbie, it's going to be good to see Barcelona having one of the best goalkeepers in the world in goal for the first time in a long, long time, in a hell of a long time. So it will be interesting to see from that point of view, albeit I would like to think he's not going to have much to do on this tour. I'd like to think we will defensively, to protect Juan Garcia well enough that he's not having to do too much. But of course, we'll see. We'll see if that is the case or not. And I think another couple of players I would point out is straight away, I'd say Araujo and Christensen. I think it's a big tour for them in terms of obviously we know the probability is, unless we do sign a centre back, which looks less and less likely, I don't think that's the right way to go. But anyway, I do think for those two players, whatever chances they do get in this preseason, not just this game, in preseason, are going to be absolutely massive. They've both got to take those chances because it felt to me, certainly for most of the season, Kubasi and Inigo was Hansi Flick's clear preferred centre back options.
Yeah, but this isn't the right sample to judge center backs. As you said, they will definitely do a good job in protecting them. The difference in the matchup is clear as day and night. The Vissel Kobe and the other team that I forgot the name. I think Jesse Lingard plays in South Korea. They aren't that great attacking and offensively. To basically see if Araujo or Christensen are ready for the game, like I said, this maybe Asia Tour. I wanted to see more youngsters involved. I think the only youngster, of course, apart from Bernal, who recovered from the ACL, and I'm very glad to see on the team sheet again. And I think it's only draw the Fernandez guy, the Pedro Fernandez, who is a left winger. I think he'll get a lot of minutes in this Asia Tour because I don't think a lot of starters maybe will play only for, like I said, the sponsors, so 30 to 40 minutes if there are some obligations in their contract. But I think the main lineup will be only with reserves and substitutes basically, because, like I said, it's completely unimportant game. It's only for sponsors, and the Asia Tour is only for us to get back in the rhythm. And it's important to have preseason games. Like I said, it's very important to have minutes in your feet and basic get back to in rhythm. And of course, Araujo. The good thing about this Asia Tour is that Araujo and Christensen will have a lot of minutes with the ball at their feet. They will probably dominate possession as we always do, and Araujo will maybe get to base. He'll improve little by little and maybe get in the first team again.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for like Rauho, for example, or Christensen, players that are kind of like on the fringes of the squad, is no dramas on this tour in terms of on the pitch. Nothing, no big mistakes, no big moments where in terms of the confidence can drop a little bit. In that kind of sense, I just think just get through the tour, obviously go through injury free, all these kind of things, and just get up to speed really. And it'll be interesting in that respect. I think, Robbie, there's no question about it. But as I say, if Araujo has like a 10 out of 10 game against Vissel Kobe, for example, I don't think that's suddenly going to propel him above Pau Kubasi and Inigo Martinez in the minds of Hansi Flick. I think it's going to have to be a bigger body of work for that to happen. I think that's probably rightly so as well. But yeah, there's a couple of players where it's going to be interesting for. There's no question about that. And just something else just to sort of touch on as well, Robbie, is we've kind of mentioned about systems and tactics this going into this season. I mean, is there anything you're looking, maybe for the team to implement, maybe on this tour? I for me personally, I'd like to see a full shift towards more of a 4-3-3 where we've actually got three out and out midfielders, or that kind of midfield composition rather than the 4-2-3-1. I think obviously as the season went on, we did kind of drift more towards a 4-3-3, but I'd like to think now is a time where you see more of a commitment to that. I mean, would you agree with that, Robbie?
Yeah, I think today I made a tweet about saying that we're such in a favorable position that we can have a midfield for any type of game state. Basically, if the opposition likes to have their midfielders deep, or like to play transitional football or play for second balls, you have such strong personnel that you can actually basically interchange your midfielders and change the personnel in a heartbeat and have the basically answer for any midfield in the world. I actually do think that we have the most tact and the best midfield in the world by far, in my opinion. Of course, yeah, Liverpool just bought Florian Wirtz alongside the Gravenberch and Soboslai or McAllister, but it doesn't come close to Dani Olmo, Gavi, Bernal, Pedri, Frankie De Jong, and yeah, like you said, the trajectory of this team and the ceiling of this team will always be in a traditional 4-3-3 without a 10. A 10 basically forces you to play a double pivot. But like I said, with the introduction of Bernal, of course Bernal will take it slowly, and he's I think not even 18. He will turn 18 and just came back from the toughest injury a footballer can suffer. and will be slowly but surely, in my opinion, integrated because he was an important piece of Hansi Flick's system. Bernal actually, because of his long strides and long legs that cover a lot of space, has a large zone of impact. A zone of impact is basically a radius, and what do you influence as a footballer? And the bigger you are, the more you influence. Actually helps Pedri in a more advanced position, which I like. In a 4-3-3 traditional, you lack basically the presence in the pockets, but with Bernal, which is maybe forced or not forced Busquets region in terms of physicality and the stature and the height helps have this presence in your pockets because you need it. The pockets are basically the gaps between the winger and the striker, and you need the connector there. And let's be honest, Pedri is the best connector you can have in the world, and Bernal alongside Pedri and maybe Gavi in the future, Frankie De Jong, Olmo. You have so many options that you can use, and they are ready at all times. And even if you don't, even if they are all tired, let's say in a hypothetical world, they are all tired and they can find solutions. You can bring Fermin Lopez in this team, and Fermin Lopez is basically a midfielder that has the mind of a killer and the mind of a pure instinct nine that always looks to shoot and at every opportunity looks to cause as much chaos and as much damage. And the midfield position will never be under Hansi Flick. Firstly, will never be basically restrained to only one thing. Like to say, you put your finger on it and say this is a 4-3-3 or this is a 4-2-3-1. If you see, always drifts from central positions to right center midfielder, right C advanced midfielders, central advanced midfielder. Basically, the midfielders don't have one position that you can say, okay, Pedri is a defensive midfielder or Pedri is an advanced midfielder. They always look to occupy as much ground and as much zones as they possibly do. And at one time, Pedri was a defensive midfielder, and we saw him with 100 touches per game and basically be a true connector from the first and second phase. But also, Pedri has the record for the most recoveries in the final third. So, like I said, in under a Hansi Flick system, you cannot really say if this is a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 and basically judge the midfielders by their instincts and their intentions and their position by themselves.
Yeah, that's very true. And say, for example, with a Pedri, what I'd also say is that it depends on the players around him, in terms of what kind of specific role he'd have, whether he'd be more pushed further up the pitch, maybe which you saw sort of under a Xavi, for example, or if he plays a bit deeper like he has in most games under Hansi Flick in general. And I do feel with someone like a Pedri, for example, when you look at the recruitment we've done, the fact that Gavi is now going to be back fully fit. Obviously, last season we know was a bit of a transitional year for Gavi in terms of from a fitness point of view. I would certainly expect to see probably Gavi play sort of double the minutes he played last season, at least, I'd say. I think he's going to play a hell of a lot more football this season. And I think you might see from that the fact that Frankie de Jong and Gavi may drop deeper, Pedri pushes up a little bit more, and it's just a midfield that can rotate. I think what I'd like about our midfield options, and why I also agree, Robbie, it is the best midfield in the world in terms of as a collective, is the fact that you can kind of put any three together within reason. Obviously, not Olmo and Fermin Lopez together, but within reason, you can kind of put any three together and it would work in a way. They'd find ways for it to work. As you say, the zones of influence, I think, are so vast with every single player in that midfield. As they can occupy several different positions and areas of the pitch, it can work in any kind of sort of composition. But obviously, there'll be one or two that Hansi Flick prefers, certainly for the bigger games. But it'll be interesting to see. And I think there'll be a lot of rotation throughout pre-season, really, in that kind of respect. And obviously, Rashford coming in as well. Maybe might play a little bit wider than Rafinha from time to time, a little bit more like a winger. It depends on his specific role, but it'll be interesting from that kind of respect. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really am looking forward to seeing Barca back in action. And I mean, from a defensive point of view, anything to say from that, from an out of possession perspective? I mean, do you expect to see the same commitment to a high line as we have under Hansi Flick, or do you think there might be slight adjustments to that now?
Yeah, I think the main focus of this season, especially for Hansi Flick, I think it was after the first leg of Inter Milan or the second leg of Inter Milan. Hansi directly went out and said that he had very little time to prepare the out of possession and basically the football without the football. And it's now you like you said, we had 2 months rest or 3 months for some guys. Of course, some guys went with the national teams or some guys went with their stuff, but Hansi Flick had a lot of time on his hands to prepare the out of possession. And of course, if he will again be stubborn with the high line, which I saw he wasn't as stubborn as in the first few months in his tenure here, because if you remember the win against Benfica, the 1-0 away game in the knockout stages, the high line was nowhere to be seen. Basically, we were in a low block most of the game, and we relied on Rafinha's transitional power and Lamin's transitional power. And of course, if Hansi Flick realized that, of course, we can play like this too, then yeah, he'll definitely improve the out of possession part of the game, because uh, to like I said in a tweet, if I remember correctly, that a lot of the mistakes we made and the fact that we lost against Inter Milan wasn't particularly down to the structure or how bad we played, but the fact that we had so many minutes in our feet as defenders. Of course, Balde wasn't available. Kubarsi had 4,000 minutes. Inigo Martinez is, I think, 34 to 35 years old right now, and he had 44,000 minutes also. Kunde was again not available because of the minutes. Yeah, Eric Garcia and Gerard Martin had a great game. Gerard Martin assisting 2 goals and Eric Garcia scoring one. But looking to an extent, you cannot basically risk all the time with this kind of injuries, because yeah, injuries in football happen, but you can basically to some extent protect some players and maybe do some more rotations. And with like you said, with Christensen and Ronaldo Araujo being available from the first game again, it will be incredible and very important for Hansi Flick to change the structure out of possession and basically build it around them. Because if we remember, Christensen was not available until the first leg of Inter Milan, which was in May. Basically, the whole season out, and we didn't know what happened to him. There was no media outlets that said anything, but now he's available from the first game, which is basically you signed two center backs in a summer window that were already here, and they are used to the Barcelona type of football.
Yeah, of course, of course. That's very important factors to sort of bear in mind. Obviously, Gavi as well comes back in straight away in terms of in terms of fitness, which will be a massive boost as well. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you only have to look at the teams that won things this season. They are outside of Barcelona in terms of PSG. Won the Champions League, and you look at Ousmane Dembele, for example. I think he played I think he started half the league games for PSG in the league. So it's interesting the fact that it's not just defense. I think across the team, I think we can balance minutes better, and I think we have more scope to do that now. Obviously, you talk about 3 players straight away that are already our players are now going to be at full fitness. Obviously, Rooney, Rashford coming in on the wings, who will certainly quality-wise provide better depth to the Yamal and Rafinha. So that'll be interesting from that point of view. But it won't surprise me this season if you see, for example, Ferran play a lot of La Liga games, but maybe less so the big games. For example, if we maybe take the PSG example or teams, Man City, for example, the Pep in terms of when they had Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. Sometimes you saw Alvarez play Premier League games, and then Haaland play all the important games, etc., etc. Or Kevin De Bruyne hardly played the games against, say, for example, Fulham at home or Southampton away. He didn't play those games. He was kind of rested for the big games, and that might be the approach we see this season from Hansi Flick. I think in the past at Bayern, he did something like that as well. Especially in the second season at Bayern, in terms of he had more options in the squad. He obviously brought in Leroy Sané, and he was able to rotate more. And he clearly had sort of his players that he saw as his trusted options for the big games, but he did rotate a lot more in that second season. So it'll be interesting from that point of view if we do get a better balance of minutes. Of course, Pau Kubasi, Inigo Martinez, I think you've got to try and drop about 1,000 minutes, I think, off that. I think 3,000 minutes is what the target should be there, really, in terms of, and 3,000 minutes in the context that they're fully fresh in the big games in the Champions League in sort of your March, April time and your big Liga games. I think that's very important as well. So, yeah. And obviously as well, at right back with Jules Koundé, is the fact that Eric Garcia looks so good in that position that you can maybe sort of rotate that all season really between the two. You can have a real bit of competition there, and it just feels we're a lot. We had a fantastic season last season. We played some of the best football we've played since Pep. I think easily probably some of the best football we've played since Pep and MSN. But now it's the second season, isn't it? It's that second album. But I don't see any reason why we can't, at the very least, equal, if not better, what we've done this season. They might not reflect in the trophies, but I think in terms of the actual application of what we're doing, I think it will be a lot smoother this season.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a myth going around on Twitter that Hansi Flick has problems in his second season, but
Yeah,
there were, yeah, it's completely with external factors that were not in his reach and in his power to control. And in Barcelona, life is beautiful, and everything will be beautiful in the second season, in my opinion.
that's the thing. I mean, obviously, the second season with Hansi Flick gets spoken about, but I remember quite well, obviously, in the Champions League, they lost in the quarterfinals to PSG, and they were absolutely dominant over both games. But it was just two moments of magic from Neymar and Kylian Mbappe on the transition that saw PSG get the away goals lead. But Bayern dominated the 180 minutes of those ties, and had they got through that, probably would have won the Champions League that year. They probably were better than Pep's Man City in that particular season, and certainly Tuchel's Chelsea, who won the Champions League. So for me, it is always the margins in the Champions League, and the league they won. They won the Bundesliga comfortably in that second season. I know I think they had a bit of an embarrassing defeat in the cup, but at the end of the day, listen, it'd be great to win the Copa del Rey again, but I don't really think. For me, I'm not really judging the season too much on the Copa del Rey, and I don't think many Barca fans will be doing it. It's all about the league and the Champions League. And if you look at the second season, in the context of it, there wasn't really that big a drop off. Bayern, I think, won 4-0 against Atletico Madrid in that sort of time as well, and looked as dominant all the way up until that PSG game. And ultimately, it was two moments of magic from probably the two of the three best players in the world at that time.
Yeah, no doubt. Hansi Flick dominated the ties against PSG, but Neymar was unplayable. Like
He
he
was.
was he was incredible. I remember that. I think it was the best knockout performance without a goal or assist. It was the
Is that
definition
in the
of
home game
unplayable.
that where they lost 1-0?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly that
he
one.
was
Yeah,
amazing in that game.
yeah.
But yeah, as I say, it could be the case if the second season's not as fun or it doesn't go well at all. But I don't think you can use evidence from what Hansi Flick's done. And I totally agree with you, Robbie. It'll be very interesting. But just to finish off with one last thing, Robbie, do you think there'll be another signing? And if there is, what position would you expect it to be?
If there will be another signing, I think it will be sadly a fullback depth. Although we don't need the fullback depth, it's a luxury signing with cannot afford both financially and morally. I think it will be just to please the fans because Laporta promised a big summer after an incredible season, and I think Wanderson or Andrei Ratiu will be brought in for Wanderson from AS Monaco and Ratiu from Rayo Vallecano. Uh, If not, I don't think there will be another signing, sadly, and I think they will prepare a lot of funds, hopefully, for the new striker in the next summer and the new left center back because it was. I think you said if Araujo gets in for Kubarsi or Inigo, I think Kubarsi will be undroppable for the next 8 to 10 years, and then just buy a partner in crime for Kubarsi as a left center back, which it's a topic for another episode because there is a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to take into consideration. But my main pick is an Italian guy called Bastoni that will complement Kubarsi perfectly, in my opinion.
I like that one a lot. I do like that one a lot. I think obviously you mentioned the striker situation. Obviously, I look at it. I think the best. If you said to me, no Barcelona player signs this summer, no other signings made, but somehow Liverpool don't sign Isaac, I'd take that. I'd take that all day long. Honestly, that would feel better than the signing. The fact that Isaac would still be on the market. Obviously, there'll be other strikers that come on the market, etc., etc. That's almost guaranteed between now and now and next summer. But that one would feel pretty good if no one picks up Isaac and Bastoni as well. I'm assuming no one's going to pick up Bastoni, but as well, if you look at Inter Milan's situation, they might have a bit of an iffy season. that might drop his price down a little bit going into next summer. So it's going to be interesting. It's one to watch, definitely. Obviously, Leao, a player we've mentioned quite a lot, looks like he's going to have a bit more of a central role this year at AC Milan. Maybe that one might develop. We might develop into a bit more of a number 9. He might get back on the market again. We'll see. And again, it's just speculation at this point. But Robbie, I don't know if you'd agree with any of that or if I'm just waffling.
No, I completely agree. I think that we'll have a free run for Isak next season, and it will
If it
be
doesn't go
all
through,
movies. I hope it doesn't, and I
hopefully,
wish it
hopefully.
doesn't.
You still there, mate?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Sorry, man. Sorry, I cut out there for a second. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
Yeah, no, I said like I wish for Isak to stay at Newcastle, and maybe, of course, he wouldn't hold bench because Isak is their, I think the second greatest player Newcastle ever had after Alan Shearer. If I'm not hyperbolic or exaggerating, but Isak, even if if he forces a move this summer and doesn't get it, he won't hold bench, and of course we'll have a free run at him next season, and Laporta will get the big bag for him.
Yeah, of course. I think it's inevitable. The striker, left centre back will be the big signing next summer, but we'll see how that goes. Obviously, it all depends on this season, but this season starts on Sunday. So we'll see how that one goes. And myself and Robbie will hopefully be able to do a reaction to the game as well at some point in terms of analysing anything we see from specific individuals or specific any tactical tweaks, anything like that. We'll let you know and we will film something on as well. But Robbie, it's been an absolute pleasure as always, mate.
Thank you for having me again, bro.
No problem at all, mate. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please do. We are on that road to 5K. Hopefully, going to hit that before the season starts. Fingers crossed. We'll see. Hit that like button as well. And please leave in the comments as well who you're looking forward to seeing on this particular tour. Big thanks for watching, guys. And we will leave it there. Cheers, guys. And we'll see you later. Thanks, guys.